We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Want to know the real details on Joe Biden's inflation salvation, or why the political left is seeking to ban opponents from running for office? Well, you've come to the right place. Welcome back to Liberty Nation Radio here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. We have a packed show for you today, talking Biden's plan for inflation, a special signature Say What segment. We talk Andy Warhol and the record-breaking price tag, and why Democrats seem to hate democracy. All this and so much more. I want to take a moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Hastings, Michigan on WBCH 1220 AM and 93.1 FM. Thank you for being here. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows that will whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. So without further ado, let's get started. President Biden has launched what he hopes to be both a cure for inflation and a winning ticket for the 2022 midterms. But can his proposals really save a party that is overseeing what is arguably the worst financial crisis in a generation? Well, to help us pass the leverage from the lunacy, we're joined by economics correspondent and author, Mr. Andrew Moran. Welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So Biden's elusive dreams and schemes, what were the high points and the low points?
Well, were there any high points in that press conference? I don't necessarily think so. The whole plan, the whole press conference was superfluous because it just reiterated everything that he supported or proposed over the last year. You know, he wants to release oil from the strategic reserves. He wants to have price controls for pharmaceuticals. He wants to give households energy tax credits to save money. So nothing was really new from that, except the fact that he says now that he can taste the frustration of the American people when it comes to inflation.
What you're saying is that Biden's plan to cure Bidenomics is more Bidenomics.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing too
Right.
but it's funny. I wrote about this in one of my recent articles talking about how intervention begets intervention. So Bidenomics was a contributing factor to his inflationary environment. And what does he want to do? Add more to the problem. And then when these problems fester, and let's say he miraculously cures inflation, then you have to have more intervention to solve those other interventionist problems. I mean, that's just basic. That's not Bidenomics. That's Swamponomics, as I
Swamponomics, which is an aptly named TV show that Andrew Moran produces every week on LibertyNation.com. Well worth a visit. Now, can you give us a brief Cliff Notes version of the billionaire tax and the unrealized gains on billionaires' cash tax?
Yeah, so it's pretty much a two-pronged thing. So you have this 20% tax on households earning earning $100 million, more than $100 million a year, and you have two things there. So you have a 20% tax on the full wage income, or you have a tax on partially on your earns income and unrealized capital gains. And if you don't meet that 20%, then there's a top-up, so you pay even more on the new minimum. So this billionaire's tax, I mean, they say that they're going to generate about $360 billion in tax revenue. But that's nothing because that's over a 10-year span. So if you have $14 trillion in deficits, you're having $360 billion in new revenue. What's that? It's nothing.
Well, they have to pay for the money they've sent to Ukraine. Let's dig a little bit deeper into these so-called billionaire tax and unrealized gain taxes. I have two questions actually on this. First, as you and I have discussed before, income tax, when it came into being, was only ever meant for the ultra-wealthy. And yet here we are today with every person having to pay income tax. Now, will this tax sold exclusively as something just for billionaires, will it just stay that way? Or will it, as we've seen time and time again, come down and basically hit everybody eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my answer hasn't changed from the last time we discussed this. I mean, it's a slippery slope. It's going to start from the billionaires and it's going to trickle down to everybody else into the marketplace, especially with billionaires. Because if you look at some of the trading numbers, hedge funds and billionaires, they've been, reducing their trades in the financial markets because they were expecting, this massive sell-off in NASDAQ and the Dow Jones because of the Fed, removing the spiked punch bowl. So yeah, I mean, that thing it's going to be a millionaire's tax, and there's going to be a six-figure tax, and before you know it, everyone's paying this tax on their unrealized capital gains.
All right, and the second question, won't these billionaires just restructure to avoid paying more?
I don't know about that because for one thing, a lot of these billionaires, they're left leaning. They like to, proclaim that the government is this almighty being. So, they're glad to pay their taxes. So I don't think, what Elon Musk, he's worth $300 billion and he paid the largest tax bill in the U.S. history of $15 billion. Jeff Bezos, he loves government. He made a lot of money with all these government contracts. So I'm sure he'd go out and, say, hey, I love paying my taxes. So no, I'm Warren Buffett too. Warren Buffett, this guy's been going on for years about how we have to adopt the Buffett tax, and my receptionist is paying less in taxes than I do. So no, I don't think billionaires are going to restructure. Maybe they'll try to rework how the tax structure works for, let's say, their nonprofit organizations or their investments. But overall, no, I don't think.
Because I think a lot of people are worried that the any extra tax that they have to pay will be passed on to consumers of whatever products or services they produce.
Well, that's corporations. That is correct, but that's more of a corporations issue, not an individual billionaire's problem.
Okay, so giving this overall inflation plan, which we will get to inflation in just a moment, a realistic analysis, do you think what Biden has suggested will make life easier for struggling Americans or not?
Overall, no. And if I may go back quickly to that billionaires thing, that's not going to help people whatsoever. That's going to do more harm than good because let's say, a lot of these billionaires I mentioned in my recent article, a lot of these billionaires, they don't have their money inside a bank account just sitting there. They have it invested in a lot of the stocks, a lot of small businesses, a lot of, nonprofit entities. If they liquidate some of their assets, that stock price is going to go down. You saw that Elon Musk, he liquidated a lot of his assets. That stock is down about 25%. Now, when it comes to the overall Biden plan, no, that's not going to do much at all. You already see, because all those policies have already been implemented, not much has happened. He released the 1 million barrels per day from the strategic reserves. Gas prices are all-time highs. These energy tax credits, people are paying astronomical prices for their utilities, not going to do much overall. Pharmaceuticals, that's going to lead more pharmaceutical price controls, that's going to lead to long-term consequences. There's so much that he's proposed that it's not really doing anything at all. So no, I don't think it's going to benefit anybody. Except it may create more of an inflationary aspect because it consists more of just spending more money, taxing a certain people, injecting more into the economy. So yeah, so it's more of an inflationary aspect than anything else.
Right. Now, I can't let you escape without talking about the inflation. So the numbers came out earlier this week, 8.3%. And I guess we're seeing some people claim this is a victory because it's down. What's your analysis?
Yeah, I guarantee you Biden's he's gonna have a victory lap over this because it fell from 8.5 to 8.3%, the first time it declined since August 2021. But the only reason why it declined was because of China. Now, China, they're under lockdown, so that's that energy prices declining because of that. Used cars that also dipped. But overall, everything, the key aspects of that report are sky high. Food prices up 9.4%. The energy index up more than 30%, fuel oils up 80%. So everything that people need is what's really skyrocketing in that report. Look at the core inflation, for example. The core inflation report, which excludes of all volatile food and energy sectors, that was up. That was higher than what the market predicted. And actually, maybe one thing too about the market is that the market anticipated 8.1% reading, the headline reading, but it was at 8.3%. So you saw the market turn negative because of that.
Yeah, it seems that the stock market is having a bit of a tough time overall. Now, is both inflation likely to come down before the midterms to any significant degree, do you think?
It's hard to say. It may ease somewhat because the Fed has, taken its foot off the pedal. So it may ease, let's say, 7.5%. But it's still elevated because the key thing with inflation, especially when it's elevated, is that it's sticky. It's going to be there for a long time. So if it's at 8.5% or 7.5%, it doesn't really matter because a lot of people are still suffering in a high inflationary environment. And then the conceit and arrogance of the Federal Reserve saying that it can establish a neutral rate, it's befuddling because the Federal Reserve cannot know what a neutral rate is in the broader economy because it's not this omnipotent leviathan that knows it all. It doesn't, because that's the problem with central banking and the central tenet of Keynesian economics is that they can pull the levers in the economy whichever way they want because they're these opiotheous individuals in the swamp.
Well, God bless the central planners because nobody else will. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
Later in the show, we talk liberty on why Democrats think bumping Republicans from the competition is a winning idea. But coming up next, we have a special Say What signature segment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.